Gonna be unorthodox. Hello, everyone. Hello, YouTube.
What's up?
Hope everyone's doing well, and hope everyone's staying safe out there tonight. I couldn't. Full disclosure, guys. I'm just gonna roll it. I'm just gonna roll with the punches. I couldn't find my intro video, so I couldn't introduce the video properly. So I just started to use the live stream this way because that's the Julius Freeman way. But I have a guest tonight, John Hervey from Beyond Time Inc.
That's right.
He is the writer and creator of Magna, which is currently live on Indiegogo. It's still live, right? It's still
right.
Going?
It goes until well, I guess Saturday night, Sunday morning. I think at midnight is when it ends.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's start with that. Give us a little, I guess, a summary of what Magna is about.
All right. So, Magna, without, for those that know Black Tiger, is in the same universe, but it takes place. This story takes place in a different era. So it takes place in 1942, and you have the protagonist. She is kind of holed away. She's holed away in her home with her parents in Idaho, and they've really kind of kept her tucked away because she has power. She's special, and they wanted to keep her protected. Well, when this beast that you see right there on the screen comes knocking, for the first time, she's got to put her powers to use to defend her family, and she does so successfully. But upon that, she learns that her parents are actually, they adopted her. So this sends her on a journey of self-discovery. So in 1942, the world was on fire. The World War II was afoot, big time in Europe, and the shadow was looming over in America. And she travels to Finland, where, and she's in search of her parentage, but she finds herself, partially in amidst, some of the action of World War II. She's in a Finnish village, and she finds herself trying to defend a village, and she ultimately finds herself in the midst, in a group of a pantheon, a mighty men of old. But this isn't unlike any other pantheon because it's a hodgepodge. It's characters from the Aesir, which is the Asgardians, Olympians, Egyptians, Chinese pantheon, and they've all come together for the purpose of survival. So they're being exterminated. And she now finds herself, as she's trying to figure out who she is, she finds herself in the midst of their struggle and ultimately becoming a linchpin to her survival and theirs as she continues to learn more about herself. So that was actually my pitch without giving away too much meat.
All right, nice. No, that's nice. That sounds awesome, actually. Wow. So, are you a student of history or myth? Because it sounds like you have a little bit of a hodgepodge here, like like the word you used earlier of history and also the mythos, like the ancient Greek heroes and the gods and whatnot. So, are you a fan of that? Are you a student of that kind of thing? Very,
very much so. So, I've always found World War II to be a fascinating and horrific time in history.
Right.
Just in terms of and things that happened there, some of those things are stranger. Sometimes facts are stranger than fiction. And then, and I've always been a fan of mythology. Growing up, I loved reading mythology. I was a big D&D player, role player. So, I remember when my buddy got the Deities and Demigods, book. Man, I would go through that thing hours at a time and just look at all the different, pantheons, and then that kind of led me to do some other extracurricular reading, just about different cultures and how different cultures, kind of have their mythology and how that mythology is kind of played into the development of those cultures. So for me, comic books, it's my favorite medium, and it's the medium I first fell in love with. And one of the things I love to be able to do in comics, I mean, you're not constrained. It's not like a TV show or a movie where it's like, okay, well, this is a great idea, but hey, you want to make the superior piece in 1942? Well, and then you want to go and do all this stuff in the heavens. We don't have, there's no budget for all of that. Comics, no such thing. It's just whatever page rates you got to pay for people and your imagination. So I love making these kind of hodgepodge books. I love making these mix-ups. So it's got a mix-up of history. It's got a mix-up of kind of mythos and mythology. And I think a very relatable character, because at the end of the day, she's trying to discover who she is. She's trying to discover her purpose. And everybody at some point in their life was just, doing soul searching, trying to figure out, well, whether it's what am I doing with my life? What do I want to be doing with my life? Who am I? So those are the kind of things that I think resonates with all of us. She just happens to be doing it, from the perspective of somebody with superpowers.
Right. No, that's perfect. No, that's perfect. That's the way. I mean, Spider-Man's an example that I could think of off the top of my head. Who does the right? Who at first uses the powers for selfish reasons, but then of course the tragedy happens with his Uncle Ben that leads him to the life of a hero, and so on and so forth. So that's awesome, man. So that's a good segue to, you mentioned that comic books are the best medium. I agree with you 100%. When I was 13, I walked into my first comic book shop, and that was it. I was hooked.
Yeah.
I didn't buy anything. I mean, I bought something, but I didn't know nothing about comics. The only thing I knew about comics was Superman, Batman, and that's it.
Yeah.
But when I walked into that comic shop, there's two things that I saw that stuck to my mind. One was the Kingdom Come poster, where in the forefront it was Captain Marvel fighting against Superman. It blew me away. I was like, oh my gosh, Shazam against Superman? That's a thing that happens.
Can they do that? Yeah.
Yeah, can they do that? Oh my god! And then the second thing was I saw a poster of a crossover between the Pit, and the Hulk, drawn by the Unknown. And I remember looking at the artwork, going, "Where am I? What is this place?" And I was hooked.
Keown's artwork, man, was like, whoo.
Out of this world.
And I would wait. Great. He was putting out Pit like every 6 months, dude.
Yeah, I know.
And I'd go to the shop just looking for that book.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I had a friend who was a huge Dale Known fan, and he told me stories like, yeah, man, it was just terrible waiting for his books to come out but once you got them, they were worth it. They're worth it. They're worth the wait because you got quality. Yeah, you got quality with every page, and that's very rare nowadays. But tell us, what was your moment? Your moment when you saw? Was it a comic book that someone gave you, or you entered a store? You walked by a store. You walked in. Tell us the story, the origin story of John Hervey's love for comic books.
I'm an older head, so when I first kind of was exposed to comics, it was really before the direct market. So comics were in the local drugstore, they're at the 7-Eleven. So like I would go with my mom to the local drugstore, Webster's, and they had one spinning rack of comics. So while she was doing her thing, I'd be looking at the comics, and she'd usually let me get one or two. So back in the day, I mean, Super Friends were on, so I knew who Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman were, and I knew who Aquaman was. But I didn't put two and two together. I didn't know that the Super Friends were the Justice League. I didn't know that. So I knew those characters. The old Spider-Man cartoon would run in the day, so I knew Spidey, and they'd show some of the old Marvel cartoons like the Hulk and Iron Man and Thor, so I knew those guys. So I'd pick up some of those books here and there, man. And they were cool, and I loved them, so I really enjoyed them. But it was always like, when I went there, it was really painstaking because, like, mom's going to get me one or two books, so I got to choose well, and I didn't at the time, and I didn't understand fully how the circulation of comics worked. Cause just like whenever we went, and you get a book. And then one day I went, and this one book just caught my eye and had this giant Crusher Creel on it. And he was holding Miss Marvel, the good Miss Marvel, not Miss Marvel from back in the day, holding Miss Marvel up like he was King Kong, and Iron Man was attacking him, and the Beast was attacking him, and the Vision was attacking him. And I didn't know who the Vision was. I knew who Iron Man was. I'd seen the Beast before because I had a buddy that collected X-Men, but I didn't really know who this cat was. But I was like, but this book looked really cool. So I was like, I'm going to take a flyer on this. I'm going to get it. Well, it ended up that this was a book, that was drawn by John Byrne. So who went on to be like my favorite artist, one of my favorite artists out there, and even storytellers. So I read this book numerous times, and I just fell in love. I mean, I'm just reading it over and over again the same day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So I'm sitting, I'm still have the comic book with me. It's dinner time, and my mom's like, can you put the comic book aside? I told her, I said, listen, Mom, I am now a comic book collector. Nice. And she's just like, that's good, baby, but you need to finish your greens. So, so that was me like professing something that has stuck with me for ages. But when comics are done well, there's nothing better, man. I mean, the story and the art, plus you still have space for your own imagination in between the panels. Oh man, I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love. And then and back in the day, I mean, it was not cool back in the day to collect comics. So it's like you just kind of found out by happenstance usually that certain people, like one time I went to the drugstore and my buddy was there and he was looking through the spinner rack. So he kind of looked at me and I looked at him and they had put a second spinner rack there. So I was like, okay, well, look, I can't pretend. I can't front. Go over there and start going through the spinner rack. Oh, you read comics too? Yeah. He was reading Daredevil. So I said, okay, you're going to get Daredevil. I'm now getting Avengers. So we would, so he would pick up Daredevil. I pick up Avengers. And like, we had no idea of the quality of the books we were getting. He had the original Miller run of Daredevil. Oh, I went to his house because he was he called me up and I read that whole story arc where Bullseye killed Elektra on the floor of his room. And I was just like, my mind was just, I was just like, oh man, all the way through to when Daredevil rolled up, Bullseye. I mean, he had the whole thing. And the comics were just amazing. And we just fell in love, man. And, between comics and, playing D&D and stuff like that, I just felt like my imagination just was probably running rampant, maybe a little bit too much for my mom's taste, but and then from there I would spend time. If I wasn't hanging out with my friends, I'd be writing and drawing. I'd be making comics. I would just kid comics. I'd make just some episodes. Back in the day, any character, Spider-Man. There was a show I used to like back in the day called Space Ghost, man. I'd make like Space Ghost comic books and, you name it, name it. And I just had the fever and I never, I think it's always been in my heart. And even as an adult, I've always loved comics. When I was in school, when I was in college, a buddy of mine started working over at, Motown. They set up a comic books and animation shop in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I was born and raised in LA. I don't live in Los Angeles anymore. But I was going to school out there, and my buddy's like, "Hey, I think I can get you on board here at Motown Animation." So I was like, "Cool." I'm like, I don't have any schooling for any of this. He's like, he got me on board. I was just a gopher. So I was working for Michael Davis, who was one of the founders of Milestone. And, I was just this gopher, but I was always pitching him ideas. Right. And, I got to work with like my buddy who's an editor. So I got some editing credits and started learning more and more of like kind of the game from that perspective. And then what ended up happening, I've been there for a couple of years, and they they put their solicitations in Diamond for their books. And he had already submitted the solicitation, but the writer ghosted. So he's like, "Hey, John, look, no pressure, but it was a Thursday." He's like, "You're going to come back here on Tuesday. You're going to leave. You're going to come back here on Tuesday with full script for the first issue, and you're going to give me a mini series and this book was a story that my buddy named Chuck Drost had created called Trouble Man." He's like, no pressure. He's like, "But if this is bad, you don't have to worry about working in this industry again. You won't get any work here, but don't worry about it. You just go work." So I was like, but the thing is, I didn't tell him until years later, because like he came from New York,
right,
with his studio of artists. They were called Bad Boy Studios, and
Nice.
all these cats were there near the office in the Mid Wilshire district, but none of these cats could drive, so they all lived close. But I had a ride, so it's like I would hang out with them all the time, and I would like the guy who created Trouble Man. I would go to his spot, and we would just riff ideas. And I had so much stuff already written. I didn't tell my boss until years later, after I didn't work for him anymore, that I pretty much already had everything mapped out. So when I came back, so he thought like I wasn't sleeping or whatever. So when I came back on a Tuesday and like, he's like, wow, you really delivered. And he's like, and this is fine. This is good. We'll go with this. So that was the first time I got published, and they were being published through Image, and it afforded me the chance to meet a number of folks and just to get into the industry. And I knew that I loved it, man. It wasn't just a thing as a kid. I mean, I was like, man, I love this. But the thing is, it's a very challenging industry. So it's like getting published once is great, but I could never get consistent work. Not that I can make a living, So, do a little freelance on the side. But then I was like, okay, I gotta bear down and just, get a job, take care of it. But, but the embers of that dream were always there. So I've steadily been creating books over the years, and it's kind of psychotic almost because I didn't know how I was going to distribute these things, so I have, kind of have a library of stuff that you don't know how you're going to distribute. And then lo and behold, CG breaks out like a wildfire, and I'm like, wow, is this real? And, I've got buddies that are telling me, oh man, don't be a part of that. It's this, that, or the other thing. I said, well, you know what? I'm only going to know unless I reach out and I see what's going on.
Right.
So the funny thing is, like, really one of my first reach outs was to John Malin, and he was cool. So he was just like, hey, yeah, why don't you hop on my show? And I had just launched a Kickstarter. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was up. I'm just like, hey, I'm just trying to sling my books. And it was really educational. I mean, first of all, he kind of, no nonsense, just kind of broke down, hey, this is kind of where your campaign is weak. These are the things that, so he broke a lot of things down. And then he just kind of told me what was up with the landscape. And I said, you know what? To me, that's cool. I mean, he really wasn't candy coating any of it. He's like, you're probably not getting the numbers you want to get because you're doing X, Y, and Z on your, and I said, hey, that's great. And one of the things I appreciate about the community is the community helps each other. So, I mean, I've learned a lot throughout this process. I've been growing, meeting more people in the community. Because to me, man, I'm in it for the same reason you're in it, bro, which is the comics.
Yeah.
I love comics. And there was a while there for a couple of years kind of before, getting in the community where the comics that were being produced were so bad, from the big two that I was just like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to, I don't mind spending the money, but you got to give me something worth, me spending my money on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been very satisfied, following indie books because, my main thing is as a creator and as a fan of somebody's creation, I should not be more vested than the person that's creating the book. And that's where I got to with a lot of the big two books. I realized I love their characters more than they love them. And I'm like, see, I'm getting my feelings hurt and I'm getting my heart broken over stuff they don't really care about. So I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I want to buy books from people that love what they're doing, that love their creations, because it shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. For those of you just joining us, I'm talking to John Hervey, the creator of Black Tiger, Legacy of Fury, Magna, The Last Pantheon, and he is I just learned that you've been in this for a while now, so you're not a newbie. You've actually been around the block for a few years, but you've jumped the game. You've I guess you could say jumped to the next level, which is crowdfunding campaign.
And I'm a newbie at this. So this is like comic book production is one thing, but then like the whole crowdfunding, it's a whole different beast. It's a whole game in and of itself that you have to understand and be a part of the community. So I'm new to that. I'm enjoying it though. I'm absolutely loving it.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about Black Tiger. Since I've noticed you mentioned that you love a few times that I've been on the other shows, other streams with you. You mentioned that you're also a fan of martial arts, kung fu films. So
yes,
so
sir.
now let's explore Black Tiger: Legacy of Fury and tell us a little bit about what the story is about.
All right, so this is like my flagship. This is my baby. That when I first knew that, like, okay, I'm gonna self-publish, and this is a story that really was kind of near and dear to my heart because, like I said, I like to do kind of mix-ups, like mixing up different genres. So I mean, there are things that I love. I love Hong Kong kung fu movies, but I also love like American gangster movies, and I love comic books, and I also love kind of those Chow Yun-Fat Wu movies, So I wanted to be able to take a whole bunch of those different elements and mash them up into one book.
Nice.
So Black Tiger has all those elements. It has some American gangster. It has some of the old school kind of like Chow Yun-Fat kind of action. It's got just some supernatural kung fu, and it's really a story also from a human perspective of sibling rivalry, and it's also a generational story. So you can see the difference between the old generation Black Tiger, and then you have this new generation, this brother and sister, and they're Asian American, but they're second generation Asian American. They don't even speak Chinese. You know what I mean? Right. So it's just like, you see the cultural differences, and this is something that all of us face, whether it's in our families, we face kind of the generational gaps,
right?
Kind of as things, and especially if everybody's family, unless you're an American Indian, came from somewhere else and got here, right. So and there is those generational things that happen, and then also kind of the societal, people have maybe a certain generation just kind of has a different perspective on things, and a lot of what this story is about is the new Black Tiger becoming comfortable in her own skin because she's not like any other Black Tiger. She's not like any other Black Tiger from a cultural perspective, and she lives in a totally different day and age. And the way that she finds out about it is, it seems kind of like happenstance. It seems almost like, she kind of tripped into it, as opposed to being prepared, the way that prior Black Tigers have been prepared. So, there's a lot of different elements, and, there's kind of the old progeny before, where it was handed down to males. And she seems to be, at least from the first female, at least the first female in a very long time, to be the Black Tiger. So there's a lot of fun elements, man. Awesome. and a lot of awesome kung fu. You gotta have that.
You gotta have that, right?
That's why I backed the Ghetto Dragon, because you gotta. Sometimes you just need some good street level kung fu. People just need to get whooped.
Yep, absolutely. If you have not backed the Ghetto Dragon, back it today. It's on in demand.
I'm looking forward to that, brother. I'm looking forward
to that.
Thanks,
man. Thanks. I appreciate it. I look forward to you guys reading it, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Now, for those of you who are hardcore comic book fans, you may recognize the cover artist of this book. I try to zoom in, but for some reason your website doesn't allow me to zoom in on the image. But the cover artist of the Black Tiger series is Greg Horn. Yes, that Greg Horn. If you guys don't know Greg Horn, he was a 90s staple in Marvel, right? Mainly Marvel.
Marvel. So mostly in Marvel, because he did a lot of Elektra. So remember, he did those Elektra covers, and then he did those She-Hulk covers.
That's right. So tell the readers a story of how you got the famous Greg Horn to do these covers for essentially an indie creator, because typically people like Greg Horn, they stick to the big guns. They stick to the people like Marvel and DC, and sometimes even Image, because Image has some superstars on their roster as well. So tell the viewers out at home exactly how you were able to get the services of Greg Horn.
Well, I was ignorant enough to think that I could just reach out to anybody. So, I saw he had his website, and he made the mistake of putting like some contact information. So I literally, I emailed him and just told him, because I'm a fan, but then all of us that are creating, we also have to remember then we're also business owners. We're owner operators.
Right.
So,
right.
I definitely approached him respectfully as a fan, but also let him know that as an owner operator, I wanted to know how much it would cost to get a cover from him. And, I know I'm probably not the first person that's ever, made that inquiry of him. But he was very accommodating. And we actually ended up pretty quickly coming to, an agreement. I wasn't in a super rush. And he had like work to do for the big two that was real.
Right. Yeah.
And at the time he didn't have a restrictive contract, so he was able to do it. So, I mean, it was insane. So, I mean, literally it's one of those things where I just kind of, I talked myself into something, and I'm like, okay, now I got to pay for this.
Yeah.
So my wife was like, well, and it was awesome because first of all, Greg's an awesome dude. He's an amazing dude. And, I would see him at shows pre-COVID, always a gentleman. He even put like the covers in like some of his art books and stuff like that. So, I mean, He treated it just at the same level that he treated his other work, And, for me, it was a big learning because, when you're making a book, you need to do things. Of course, you do things from a fan perspective, but you also need to do things from a business perspective.
Absolutely.
And, I have no regrets about having these covers, but don't think that just getting covers from somebody is going to make your book move. So at the end of the day, you got to remember that, you may not get all the economics out of doing that you think. I mean, for me, I was thinking more like a fanboy, honestly, that he was going to do my covers. And I really hadn't thought from a marketing perspective, So I love these covers. They're amazing and they're awesome.
They are amazing.
On my thing that I realize now, and especially the way that the community is now, it is all about community, and it's important to work with high quality folks, but you know what? It's also important to work with hungry folks too. Absolutely. So, am I saying I wouldn't want to get Greg on covers? Of course, I would love to get him on covers again, if it were possible and it made sense. But it's also makes a lot of sense to produce something that is high quality, even if it's an artist that people don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of the time that's how you get discovered, right? Sometimes you break through because you're at the right place at the right time, and you never know your style or your craft, your craftiness of a cover artist or interior art can lead to people going, who is this guy? Who is this artist? I want to know more about this artist, and does this artist have any more stuff I could purchase, because
exactly
stuff is amazing, and that happens a lot of the time in the comic book industry. It's happened to many artists before, like the Jim Lees, Tom McFarlane. They all started somewhere, then eventually, as they got as they did more and more comics, that's when more and more readers were like, who are these artists? These artists are freaking amazing, man. They're just hitting it out of the park all the time, and now you have the superstar artists. And it's another thing too, folks. Take a page from John Hervey's playbook here. He was not afraid to ask. That's key. Don't be afraid to ask. If he, like you said, he made the mistake of putting contact information. So you went, you know what? Well, he put it there, so obviously he wants someone to contact him. So I want to contact him.
That's right.
And you build a rapport with the guy, and you asked him. And he said, yeah, you know what? Yeah. What do you have in mind? And boom, the rest is history. I mean, these covers are amazing, guys. I mean, this is like, you're right. It may not move and they may not push numbers up, but it'll get eyes to the books, at least.
Exactly.
That's the key for a good cover, for a good comic book cover. Anyway, it's the key factor is to get people to kind of do a double take. Like, hey, what's this? This looks interesting, because this cover alone, this one right here, is like there's so much to take,
dude,
in this one cover.
And this was the other cool thing about this. So like, because he was doing, I can't remember if he was doing Electra covers at that time, or if he was doing Emma Frost covers. But he was telling me, like, he's like, well, one of the things is, like, I usually don't know the story, so I'm just kind of making a cover. So I told him, and I gave him the script for each of the issues he was doing the story for, and he did something that riffed off the script. So this exact thing doesn't happen. This exact thing doesn't happen in the story, but it tells you that there's a reveal.
Right.
And when he did this, he was just like, man, is this too far off base? I was like, dude, I love this. You know,
Right.
you're giving, when you give artists the creative freedom, you know, when you give them, hey, this is what you're working with. Because, I mean, he's known for, you know, kind of the cheesecakey, just, hey, here she is. But, you know, because he doesn't have context for what's going on in that story. But with the context, you can see every cover. I mean, there's a story behind every cover that is relevant to what is happening in the book. And this cover, man, me and my wife, man, this cover to this day, I mean, we look at this and we're just like, dang.
Yeah. Even I'm looking at it going, damn.
I love this cover, bro.
I hope you were bold enough to ask him, hey, is it okay if I get the print for this one?
Well, you know what? I think what I'm because we sold out of the Black Tiger of the books when we did it the first go around. So we're going to be doing another Black Tiger campaign because we already have the next series completed. So we're going to do that after Magna, and I need to reprint the first series, and I'm either going to use this cover or the first one where she's kind of kneeling down, picking up her dad's badge, you know, as the cover for the second printing. I'm not too sure yet. But either way, people won't be disappointed. It's exceptionally solid covers that Greg did for this book.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. ID Crisis said, isn't it weird how we artists always have a level of self-consciousness no matter how skilled we are?
Yeah.
Yes. Self-doubt is a major, it could debilitate you if you don't know how to steer it, you know, because self-doubt is part of the game, obviously. But at some point, you're going to have to trust your skill, because if you can't trust your skill, then how are you going to grow? How are you going to know that you're actually any good without outside input? You know, like readers telling you, hey, you know, this book wasn't that great, or, you know, this book was fantastic. So that way you have a gauge as to, okay, I'm going down the right path here. Yeah. So speaking of that, since you've been around in church, I call it humility. Yes, it's humility. That's exactly right. Humility. You must be humble of yourself.
Yeah.
So that way you can show it. It'll show in the book itself.
It does. And, you know, I think the other thing that artists have to be able to do is, you know, be content with the work that they've done. So, I mean, one of the big things with the Black Tiger is that's a big compilation. It's 172 pages. So that was made over a period of time. And you can see the art is good, but you see the art getting better. And I think sometimes as artists, and don't get me wrong, I did remaster some of the pages, but then I almost got obsessive to the point where the book didn't come out, because then you start wanting to remaster everything. You know, you put your best foot forward. You're going to continue to grow as an artist. So that means just by nature that you're going to do another project, and then you're going to look back at your other project, and it's like you got to still have some appreciation for it. You can't just be like, oh, that sucked. No, it didn't. That's how you grew. You know, and as somebody that loves comics, I like watching artists grow. I like watching artists develop. My feelings, you know, it's like when I see, you know, some people are like, oh man, but issue or volume 2 looks so much better than volume 1. Good.
Right.
Good. Then let the artist grow. That doesn't diminish what volume 1 is. It just means that the artist is growing.
Absolutely. You're absolutely. And not only the artist is growing, but also the connection between the writer and the artist as well. Because in my experience with the Ghetto Dragon, when I hired Alan Fletcher, who's the artist, the interior artist of the book, there was a time where in those first maybe 10, 15 pages where we're still figuring each other out. You know, what do I like? What does this artist like to draw? Because you have to, as a writer, because I don't draw, I can't draw. I could draw a little bit, but not to the level of like, you know, drawing interior pages. But the most important factor that a lot of writers need to understand when you write comics is that you have to ask the artist, what don't you like to draw and what do you like to draw? So that way, when I write the scripts, I can at least, you know, exploit your strong points, and then you can work on your weak points later on, you know, because obviously everyone has their weak points. And that's another factor too, is that once we were I guess you could say we're flowing together, then it was like music, you know. It just made sense. Everything made sense. I didn't need to draw layouts anymore. Like I would do quick little chicken scratch thumbnails. Like, no, this is what I mean when I wrote this on panel 4. This is what I'm talking about. But now it's like I don't even need to do that anymore, because he knows what I like, and I know what he likes. So that way now it's all flowing. And that's a good example too of the Captain Britain with Alan Moore and Alan Davis.
Oh man!
If you read that book? Have you read the entire series?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've noticed that the first the first 10 pages, the art isn't really good. It's kind of choppy, but then after that, it's like whew, it just takes off, man. Like especially after when Captain Britain. I think it's the part where he meets those pirates, those interdimensional pirates that like after that, that's when everything started. Like, wow, the panels look amazing, the flow is great, the lettering is fantastic. And so it just takes a while for, you know, to find your groove, I guess, you know. And once you find your groove, you're set to go.
Comics, it's a collaborative effort, and that's what makes it great. I mean, you know, one of the things that I've enjoyed, you know, in working with artists is that, and for me, what I like to do is I like to script things out, and I even will break it down panel by panel, but I don't do it to constrain the artist. I do it so the artist knows what I see, because what I found is once the artist knows what I see, then they can riff off of it, and they can be like, ooh, I see what you're trying to do, but I can do it better this way. And that's how I've worked with my artists. So like sometimes, like with Rod, he'll read a section of my script and he'll be like, dude, I see what you're trying to do, but we're not going to be able to pull it off this way. You know, it needs to flow like this. And that's the reason why I like to really write out. Okay. And that's the whole thing for me. Like I'm very much, I love sequential art and I love to map things out. You know, so I love, and that's also why even in the books and the fight scenes, I literally, you know, it's like the Frank Miller fights, you know, like you can see the choreography or like the Kung Fu. But the great thing when you work with an artist that is also comfortable, they give you that healthy pushback and they say like, hey, you know what, this part, you know, I see what you're trying to do is maybe better if we go in this direction. Yeah. And once somebody knows what you're trying to do, then they can help you with the execution of it. You know, because I've talked with some other artists and they're just like, this is my vision. This is how it has to come out. And I'm like, you know, I give my vision, but at the end of the day, a book, unless you're doing everything yourself, the book is a collection of the input and the investment of different folks. And I'll tell you, Magna is such a benefit, I benefited so much from that. So it's like, my script, I broke it down, everything that I wanted. Then I worked with Marcio and he saw where I was going and then he started adding other elements. I went back and tweaked my script, you know? And then even when the colorist came on board and read the script, the colors are like music in this book. I mean, the colors set the mood for the book. And if you're paying attention to the colors in that book, you can literally just by the colors see the mood of what's supposed to be going on in that book. And then you have like a letterer, like the letterer Marco, he was amazing because he's just like, because he lettered Black Tiger too, and he's like, listen, these are different types of beings than in Black Tiger. Black Tiger had a lot of street level fighting. This is like supernatural beings fighting. So it's like when you know, the way he kind of did the fonts for their voices, or if like something got hit, the force that he would show it with, just like the letters shaking. I mean, it was just all next level. But that's because when you have people that are masters at their craft and they're invested, they're going to keep bringing their A game. But to do that as a creator, I got to give them the leeway.
Right.
To say like, hey, look, you see what my vision is, but I know that the part that you do that better, you know, and doing that without compromising the story. I mean, I feel like I'm having a ball. I'm having a blast, you know, creating these comics. And I literally, once they're done, I come back and I read them, and I'm just like, wow, you know, this is so much more than what I originally was starting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't be.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that. The process that I do comics is that I do let the artist have a room to breathe, as the term is called. So we have a editing process. So I write the script, they send me the thumbnails, and then I edit the thumbnails. And a lot of the time, they change some of the things in the script. They're not to compromise the story, as you say, but you know, just to they see a scene differently in their head. And I would say 90% of the time, it comes out way better than what I wrote in the script. Mm-hmm. Because they have the visual. They're the director, right? You know, the writers are the screenwriters, and the artist is a director of the comic book, I guess, in this instance.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, they, you know, when I do get thumbnails back, and I go, wow, that actually is. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I'll write a page that has 7 panels in the page, right? I get back a thumbnail with 5 panels. So I go, okay, there's 2 panels missing here. What happened? But then when I follow it, I go, actually, this is a lot better. This is a lot better than what I wrote in the script, and it does flow smoother. And but like you said, I have to go back and tweak the scripts, that way it could all still flow. But still, it's a great process. The collaboration process in comic book making is some of the most fun for me, because 2 minds are better than one. Yeah. And and going back to what you said earlier, the comic book medium for me as well is the best medium to tell stories. The absolutely best medium to tell stories, because like you said, you can make, you know, Magna, the Last Pantheon in a comic book form, and you don't have to worry about a $40-50 million budget that gets studios nervous, and studios will be like, hey man, what are you doing? And let's change this, we gotta change that, we gotta change this. And you're just like, nope, I'm gonna tell my story. I'm gonna tell my story, and here it is. That's right. And if you like it, cool. If you don't like it, that's okay too. Maybe it's not for you.
Vote with your dollars. It's good. If you like it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't, then go vote with your dollars elsewhere. That's cool. That's not offensive. That's good. You know, why would you want to buy? I mean, one of the things that when I was at Motown Machine Works, and we would go on Fridays, because we couldn't go because of work on Wednesdays, but Fridays we would go up to Golden Apple to get comics. And I would sometimes, when our boss would go with us, I always enjoyed, like, I'd watch how he goes through books, because what he would do, and he described it to me. It's like, he'll pick up a book. The first thing he'll do is he'll just go through the pages. And I'm just like, aren't you spoiling the book for yourself? He's like, no. He's like, I'm looking at the flow of the book. You know, he's like the panels should be telling me a story without others. So I should be able to a certain extent follow what's going on just by what's going on in the paneling. And then when I actually read it, you know, then that should really open up the world for me. You know, so, and he's like, and he was just talking about, you know, and because especially when I got the chance to write under him, he's like, listen, don't write things that people, it sounds silly, but don't write things that people can see. You know, it's like, it's, you know, you have the visual in terms of what you're reading, you have the visual in terms of the art. Let the art tell what the art tells, and the things that you can't tell with the art, you tell with your words. He's like, but don't double down. That's, you know, he's like, I love comics. He's like, I hate that. He's like, if I can see it, you don't need to tell me it. Right. You know, and make sure that your book is flowing. Otherwise, it's just, it's like some of these books that you look at and it's just like you feel like, what is this? This is just talking heads.
Yeah.
There's no flow to this, and you want to have that flow. So I mean, yeah, comics, it gets no better.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. And you had a very wise boss, by the way. Like that was very good advice. And he was absolutely right. That's the same thing that I do. Well, I did. I don't do it so much now because I don't go to comic book stores as often like I used to. But whenever I did go to a comic book store and I was aching for something new, something fresh, I'm like, I have enough. I've had my fair share of Marvel and DC and some Image. I'm looking for something else now. Something, maybe a treasure, a hidden treasure, indie treasure somewhere. And I would do the same thing, the same rule. Does the cover hook me? And when I pick it up, do the sequentials flow? Can I follow the story without having to read it? And then when I go home and read it, I come back for the next issue.
That's right.
And that's how you hook. Well, at least for me, I can't speak for every other reader out there, but for me as a comic reader myself, that's how you'll be able to hook me, is the cover, then the sequentials, and then the story.
That's right.
And when the story and the story keeps taking me back to the store so I could get the next issue and find out what happens next.
Exactly. That's what gets you to buy the next issue is the story.
Yeah. Cliffhangers, people. Cliffhangers. What happened to the good old-fashioned cliffhanger where it left you hanging and you're like, oh, I have to wait a month for the next issue. Damn it. Oh. Those are the best, man. Those are the good times. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't picked up a modern comic book lately, but do you still pick up modern comic books lately? No,
everything I've been picking up has been independent.
Okay, well, let's explore that. Do the independent books do that?
So
do they leave you? Is there a strong enough cliffhanger for you to be like, "Ooh, I can't wait for the next one"? At least.
So some of them
you don't have to name names.
No.
You don't have to name names.
So some of them are doing that, and some of them are kind of wrapping up the episode in that particular issue. And my thing is this: the reason why I don't mind them wrapping up the episode is because I gotta wait 6 months to a year or more to get the next one. So it's one thing if I'm gonna come back in a month and I'm gonna get that book. And that's why Pitt was driving me nuts. I'm like, where is this book? I didn't come in this month. Come on, man. We have that expectation of that book being there. But I know it's like, okay, well, the campaign for the follow-up is coming up in, it's gonna be next year or whatever. It gives you a different kind of perspective. So I think you got to have the combination. So I feel like, and I think our industry is figuring it out. I feel like if you're going to give a cliffhanger, in this environment, you got to make sure that you give enough story so that people don't feel like, dude, I just got teased. I didn't get to see anything that I wanted to see, You got to give people, you can do it in a book that comes out every month. You can have a story, you can just tease folks till the next month, but you can't do nothing but tease folks if you're not going to get the next book for 6 to 12 months. You got to give people some meat. Yeah, then you have a cliffhanger, but you know what? But I can still go back and enjoy the meat that was in that story and not just be like, I didn't see anything that I wanted to see.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like all this buildup. It's like having a movie and all you get are, like the first couple of beats, and you don't get to any of the any of the good stuff. So I think as because we really are an industry now, we're figuring out that we have to be a little bit different than the monthly periodicals. We got to be able to deliver enough story so that people feel satisfied, like they ate, but then give something for people to come back for. So I think it's a little bit of a different challenge than if the books were coming out monthly.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So it's got to be a little bit of both, depending on the output of the creator. Yeah, right?
I think so. And my thing right now is like, we're really in a new industry, because distribution is different. The timing, the periodicity of the books are different. So I have a lot of grace for books. No, I hope people have grace for my book too.
Right. Yeah.
And I see all of us kind of figuring it out as we go, and we're all kind of, talking with each other and, kind of getting ideas from each other. So I think it's a good thing, man. I think we're going to continue to see this independent industry that we have, this community, just continue to blossom. And I think we're going to see more of that, because at first it's like, it's just enough just to get a book out. That's a big deal. Yeah. You're actually publishing a book. So you're like, okay, so now I've published a book. Okay. All right. Let me take a step back from a strategy standpoint. How do I get people to get the next book? And what do I feed folks so they felt like, hey, that was a good meal? You don't want people to come away and just say like, man, this dude gave me just some tiny little appetizers. I didn't get any of the meat, and he wants me to come back next year, to get his book. So I think it's a different. So, and I don't have it perfected. I mean, with Black Tiger, just having had the benefit of having a body of work, I released a 172-page volume. I was like, I want to get you into the world. So I give people a full story arc. It's the equivalent of giving somebody a movie. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, because I'm not doing that for Magna. For Magna, I'm cutting it in half. So I'm giving you like the first half. Right. And then I'm going to give you the second half in the next Magna campaign. And then I see people, that are able to deliver smaller books, but they're able to do it. They're able to give you meat. I don't mind smaller books. Just don't give me 24 pages of just intro. Right. If you're gonna have a smaller book, you got to get me in there. Yeah. You got to get me in there. And then if you want to, as the story progresses, if you want to, flashback stuff or show other stuff, that's fine. But you can't, if it's a smaller book, it can't just be, I think, just an intro, just without any of the meat. I want to see the hero. I want to see the hero in action. And honestly, that was one of the reasons why I did Black Tiger the way that I did, because I wrote that story much more kind of linearly. And and people have enjoyed the story because they've gotten the whole story. But I was concerned that if I gave people just a quarter or half of that story, they're like, man, you didn't give me the meat, dude. Right. These were tasty appetizers, but I'm not going to wait a year for you to give me the meat. Where's the beef? Right. So the way Black Tiger was written, I felt like I got to give you the beef, which means that the way the story's written, I'm going to have to give you all of it. But I feel like you can easily write around that. I mean, that's just the way I wrote that particular story, but I'm not writing stories, I think, in that way anymore. I want to make sure that out the gate, like Magna, out the gate, man, you're having steak. You're having steak. Yeah,
it sure does look like that. When I look at the campaign, I look at the first few pages, I'm like, okay, it looks like it starts right off the bat. It doesn't have you wait. So that sounds exciting. I have Ferris here, Ferris Jabbar. Yeah. Oops, wrong one. What's up, Ferris? He asked a question. How much control does the independent creator have with the printing company? If issues arise, are you able to work directly with printing house to get the quality you want without additional charges? So since you've had fulfilled, is there any answer you could give to Ferris, who I know he's followed the channel for a while. He's an up and coming artist. He's working on his stuff, so he's kind of gauging to see what he has to do. So if you want to give him you could give him an answer and some advice if you like.
Definitely. First and foremost, I'd like to see some of his stuff, man. I love. Yeah. That's one of the things I love about this community. I mean, in terms of printing companies, I think I learned a lot with Black Tiger. And COVID didn't help. Yeah. But there's a couple of different pieces to it. So, the printer I worked with in terms of cost was very reasonable. The challenge I had, honestly, was the timing. So, doing a smaller print run with this printer and the effects of COVID, I was actually on time in my production, but I became very late with printing. So you have two things, and you hit the nail on one of those issues. One of the things is, in terms of quality, do you get the quality that you want without the additional charges? So here's what I'm doing this go around. Okay. So this go around, having spoken with some other folks, I'm going to work with a company called Mix'em. I'm going to work with Mix'em. They're UK based, but what they do is they work with a number of different printers locally. So they work with local printers. And what you do, or what I'm going to do, is the great thing is you can upload a PDF. You can see exactly what your book is going to look like. You kind of have someone that you can work with, and then I can order one book. I mean, they say you can order kind of a draft, but it's actually cheaper if you just order one book. So, it's kind of funny how that works. So then I'll order one book of each of the books, and it's worth spending that money to get that one book. And that one book is going to be expensive. You order one book, $30, $40 something just for one book, because there's no volume. But it's worth it. You get that book in your hand, and you get to see if you're getting everything that you were promised. You get to see how the quality of the pages. You get to see the color. You get to see everything. So my suggestion is, you want to make sure that you spend that extra $40 or whatever to get that one book, and make sure that you get exactly what it is you're paying for. Because the last thing you want to do is pay for a run of 150 books and then find that you didn't get what you wanted. Because then financially your budget is blown. You got to come out of pocket at that point. And you know what? The printer may or may not be cool at that point. They're like, hey, you ordered 150 books. We printed your 150. So I think it's worth spending that little bit of money to actually get the book in your hand. I know there's other printers out there. And I always encourage people to work with, work with local printers. It was really the timing thing that caused me to go work with Mix'em. And because I've spoken with like the Diaz brothers and a number of people that use Mix'em, and they can kind of vouch for the timing. So for me, you're talking to somebody who the printing side was probably one of the biggest challenges for Black Tiger. And that was the reason why my book was late, not the production, but the printing. So I'm trying to rectify that for Magna. So I guess we can come back in a little while, in a couple of months, Ferris, and we'll see if this worked or not. You may not want to take my advice if it doesn't work.
Well, but see, that's a good viewpoint in terms of the struggles of being an indie creator. You do everything on your own. There's no one else doing it for you. So that's the depending on how you look at it, that's either an upside or a downside to it.
Yeah, but you know what? I think as a community, though, it's our responsibility, especially when people are going to ask, like Ferris. We got to tell people. We have to inform people about how they can avoid some of these loopholes. Because, I think I commend anybody that's looking to make their own project, because that in and of itself is a big endeavor. Last thing you want to be worried about is you get your book produced and then you're worried about the printer. But the thing that I found, even talking with other folks, there's a number of folks who had printer issues on their first project, because we didn't even, Ferris, you at least have the head to ask. We didn't even have the forethought to ask other people that have been doing things, but the beauty of it is, the community we want everybody to succeed. So, never hesitate, in terms of asking questions. And these are great questions. And I'm the first one to tell you I don't have all the answers, but that came from me asking like the Diaz brothers. They came from me asking Malin. They came from me asking other folks that I'm like, hey, you've gotten your books out and I'm having problems getting my book out on time. And it's not because the art and the production isn't done. It's like, I'm struggling with my printer. Right.
Well, there you go. There you go, Ferris. I hope that that does help you in the long run. Download the video after it's uploaded on the channel and save it, archive it, and then look back to it as a reference. I recommend you do the same thing. Hopefully you have a strong computer or a hard drive where you could download the videos. I'm pretty sure there's some softwares out there where you could download and, like I said, archive and use them as reference. It never hurts. Never hurts to garner up knowledge so you can know what you're doing when you do put yourself out there into the world and sell your product to hungry comic book readers. Because I think right now is the best time to go indie, because there are a lot of hungry comic book readers who are looking for new stuff, be it superheroes or be it what the with the like the mythos, like the Magna and the Last Pantheon, and Black Tiger and so on and so forth, or even Cyberfrog for that instance, like Ethan Scavenger's books and stuff. So right now it is the time to become an indie comic book writer or artist, because it's here. Crowdfunding is the best tool, and you need to utilize it. But it is a lot of work. It is heavy work. It is long, and you have to act like a professional when you are engaged in that not in the community, but in that new industry. This new industry that's going to take over the I guess the traditional comic book industry that's kind of dying out because of Disney and AT&T just slashing it off in half. So the only companies that are going to be left are Image, Dark Horse Comics, maybe, and Arctic Press, and then that's it. That's it in terms of the scope, in terms of the magnitude of the scope of national distribution.
That's right.
It's going to be those three, and that's it. That's all that's left, and then the rest is going to be up to us. John Hervey, myself, and the other people who are going to come on. Like I saw Ace, right? Ace.
Yeah.
Yeah, Edwin the Ace. So he's gonna launch his campaign in 2 weeks. So
that's right.
There's all this stuff coming out. They're coming out, and jump on the game. Don't get left behind, because if you get left behind, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to climb that mountain, because right now is the time to get it.
Right
it's
now,
like the gold rush.
It's definitely the time to get it. We're seeing, and I think Robert Geronimo put it best. We are in the midst of a comics renaissance. That's how he put it. And this is.
Ooh, who said that?
Robert Geronimo.
Who is that? I never heard of him.
So Wirehead, he's got his book Wirehead.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's dope. And I mean,
a comic book renaissance. I like that.
And that's what this is, man. Because the whole market, the whole industry has basically been turned on its head now. Kind of the unthinkable has occurred with regards to the big two, and the void is already being filled. I mean,
yeah.
Those that retail books, they're opening their doors more to companies like Alterna and stuff like that, because you got to put stuff on the shelves.
Yeah.
These are all opportunities for us, and I guarantee you, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think anyone knows what it's going to look like, but in the next year, things are going to continue to look different. I mean, crowdfunding is going to continue to be a big part of it, and all I can say is get involved. If you've got a project, if you've got, an interest and a heart to do it, Julius is right. Now is the time. You want to get involved.
Absolutely. So we've been on here for an hour, so we're going to wrap things up. I would like to thank the chat. I'd like to thank the people who watched tonight. I think John has provided a lot of insight, and he's and obviously you can see from the passion in his voice just how much he loves the comic book medium, and how much he's given back to the medium that essentially freaking led him to create his own comic books. And the same thing with me. Comic books are a medium that we should protect, we should guard. Because if it wasn't for comic books, I wouldn't be into reading. I mean, that was the segue that led me to enjoy reading novels and essays and short stories and stuff. Because in school, I was not a bright kid. I hated reading, I hated all that stuff. But comic books was the one thing where I was able to sit down and actually focus and read and enjoy. And of course, as I got older, I wanted to create my own comic books. I wanted to share my own stories, because I had a very active imagination as a child as well. I had ideas. I had, stories in my head, bouncing off from inside this little, fragile mind of mine. And, you mentioned you drew little comics of Space Ghost and, characters that you liked. I was drawing, I was creating my own characters. I was creating little alien creatures and creating characters that were hunting them down, that kind of stuff. So it was comic books are like a great thing, And if you're not into, if going back to Ferris, don't wait. Get on it as soon as you can, because it's gonna continue on growing, and don't be fooled. Although Comicsgate does get a bad rap, the one thing I will say about Comicsgate is that they love comics. So that's all you want. You want people who love comic books. Now, of course, you may not agree with their politics personally. You may not agree with their cultural outlooks. That's okay. Everyone's different. But the one thing that unites everyone, or that should unite anyone anyway, is that they all love comic books. We all love comic books.
Yeah.
All of us. That's what we're doing this. That's why I'm here doing this live stream with John. I hit him up on Twitter saying, "Hey man, get on my show. Let's talk comics." And he was like, "Let's do it." And here we are. We're talking comics. So before we go, I want to showcase his campaign, which is still active. 177 backers at $7,000. This guy killed it with this first volume, and he's reached his goal. Obviously, he has 2 days left.
Yeah. Thanks to the community, though. That's what it comes.
Thanks to the community.
This is all about the community, and
can you guys explain Comicsgate? New to the whole no. Unless John, you're if you want to give him a little brief summary, then you're more than welcome to do so.
Well, let me first and foremost go back to your other question about the proof copy. You got to pay for it, but pay for it.
Yes.
Even if you don't pay for it as a proof, just order one book. Believe you me, you're not. You may be thinking you're saving money by not paying for the proof. No, pay for the proof. See what your book's going to look like.
Yeah.
Like with Mix'em, the funny thing is if you order one, it's cheaper than ordering a proof. So just order one copy of the book, but do that. Last thing you want to do is be surprised, saving 40 or 50 bucks.
Yeah, you don't want to get a box. You don't want to get a box of 200 copies, and you're like, wait a minute, what the hell? This page 42 is all jacked up, and that was because you didn't get the proof.
Yeah. And your question about what is CG, it's funny. I mean, I don't know if anyone has like a definitive answer except for a bunch of folks that love comics. I know there's a number of folks, like I have some friends that are just like, dude, don't be a part of CG. They've got this politics and that and the other thing. And this is me. At the end of the day, I'm in it for the comics. So different people do different things. Some people have political channels and stuff like that. I'm not in it for that. I'm in it strictly for the comics. I want to see Ghetto Dragon. I want to see my books. I want to see these other books. That's what I want. So you can be involved in whatever capacity you want to be involved. If you want to be involved kind of on the political tip with whatever's going on against, whatever against the mainstream, that's fine. For me, I don't hate the mainstream. I'm just disappointed by the mainstream. I'm just disappointed by what they're making, and I don't have anything against Marvel or DC, but they're just not making anything that I want to buy. I appreciate them because without them, I wouldn't have been in comics. But the stuff they make today doesn't resonate with me. So I'm buying Ghetto Dragon. I'm buying all these different books because, I wasn't trying to be in, maybe, whether it's a Renaissance or like ID said, maybe in a revolution. That wasn't my intention. I just want to get good books. And if you've got a good book, Ferris, then you need to get it up here so we can get that too. That's to me, CG is folks that love comic books. That's what it is.
There you go. So like I was saying, the campaign's at $7,000, 177 backers. 2 days left. So if you now have backed Magna, The Last Pantheon, Volume 1, back it today before it goes on in demand. Is there anything you want to give update? Any tiers you recommend for people who are thinking about it? They're on the fence. They don't know which one to get. Which tier do you recommend people who look at this campaign?
So I'll tell you a really cool tier. That featured one, there's 3 of them left. So Marcio Abreu, who's the penciler on the book, he will do a bust up sketch of any character of your choosing. Plus, you'll get a copy of the book for $115. So it's a good price. And we're talking, penciling, drawing, kind of like he did for that Red Sonja, and a copy of the book. And the book is 75 pages. So for $115, that's a nice deal.
That's a clear deal. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you just want to get a copy of the book, I know times have been tight, so I know for a number of folks they picked up the digital for $10. Or you can pick, and there's 3 different copies to choose from. So you can pick from any of those 3 copies or 3 covers,
Nice.
for your book. And of course, if you're really adventurous, you can get all 3 copies, or you can get this one, the trifecta. There's the graphic novel trifecta, and the one above it is if you like those pictures a lot, you can get 11 by 17 prints of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's my dude, Rod Super Looper. He does a full body commission, pencils and inks, plus a book. So if you're feeling really adventurous and you want some amazing art, I'd get that commission.
There you go. Now let's take a look at the commercial here.
Let's do it. Uh-oh.
1942, spring is in the air, but times are tense as the world finds itself at war. While high school senior Kari Scott's home finds her provincial life unfulfilling, her parents are eager to keep their lives and, most importantly, their extraordinary daughter under the radar as long as they can.
We lost the sound. All right, the sound seems to be gone. But enjoy the pretty pictures. So with these images, you guys can get an idea of some of the pantheons that are represented. You can probably guess at some of these characters as well. And there you go. 75 pages of comic book glory. And appreciate anyone who I don't take it for granted when anybody backs. So if you want to back at any level, I definitely appreciate that. And let me tell you something else. Sharing is huge. If you're just sharing about the on your social media or to folks that love comic books, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, retweeting, getting the word out, that really does help. I've noticed it with my first campaign, how far that does go when people retweet your promotion, your advertising, I guess, on your Twitter platform or Facebook. And when you get new eyes on it, they're like, "Ooh, crap, this is pretty good." Like, "Hey, this looks pretty interesting. I'm actually kind of looking for a book like this," and then you end up getting the backer from it.
Right.
So it's it looks great. It looks fantastic. I can't wait. I might back this actually. I get paid this Friday, so if I have some extra cash, I might back this and get myself a copy of this book because it looks interesting. Especially this cover here is this is the cover, one of the covers, right?
Yes, that's one of the covers.
Fantastic cover.
So there are 3 covers. The first 2 are by this one, and the one below her by Elizabeth Torque. And I really love this cover because, the one you were looking at before, I mean, you see the cold breath, kind of the hot breath coming out on the cold night from the wolf creature. And just as a spoiler, there's a lot of werewolf books out there right now. So this werewolf is a little bit different. This is actually one of the spawn of Fenrir. So that is the creature's form all the time. The moon is there because it looks great in the picture, but the creature is always a werebeast.
Awesome. So definitely a mythology flavor to it for sure, especially if it stays in that form throughout the whole book. And you're right. It was one of those things where I was like, wow, there's so many werewolf books. I wonder why that is. And I think it's just because people just love werewolves. I mean,
isn't it funny because I feel like maybe the quarter or so before that, all the books were horror books, and then a bunch of werewolf books came out. And I think it's just, people are just making stuff that they think is cool that they want to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I'm loving this whole kind of this whole Renaissance revolution.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because with Marvel and DC and Image, including Image and Dark Horse and what have you, they choose what they want to print. Writers and artists, pitch them stuff all the time, and they get turned down all the time. And it's only when the editors decide, yeah, you know what, this is pretty good. Yeah, let's print this. But with this, like you mentioned, the Renaissance, there's none of that. It's just I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna put it out. And if people like it, cool. If people don't like it, that's all right. But that's the beauty of it. You get to see stuff like this.
Exactly.
You wouldn't see stuff like this on Image or Dark Horse because I don't think. I mean, I can't really speak for Eric Stevenson or the people who work there, but I would imagine they'd be like, no, we're not looking for that kind of thing right now. We're looking for this. That's what they're looking for, and then they don't get to they don't pick it up, and and I think and I understand why, because they got a limited resource, which is why Ferris, if you're still here, Ferris, it's the reason why why you need to get on this now, because there's no one telling you no. There's no one telling you can't do that. There's no one telling you no, we're not gonna do this. The people who get to choose are the people who back your book. Those are the people who choose that they want you to print this thing. Is who funds your campaign. Those are the people you want to get to say, I want this. I want this in my hands. I want this in my collection. So I'm going to throw a few bucks your way, and I'm going to help you get there. And that's the beautiful part about this comic book renaissance, as John Hervey or what's the guy's name? Rob Geronimo said, which is I agree with that 100%. We are living through a comic book renaissance, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. It's going to be different,
yes,
but it's going to be beautiful. Exactly, in my opinion.
I think so too, and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like in a year, but all you know is you want to be a part of it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Creator. I saw ID Crisis. I got to let you know. Don't worry, there is no shortage of Magna in the overalls, so you'll get your you get your Big Ginger and overalls fixed. I got you.
There you have it, ID Crisis. You're gonna get what you asked for when you get John Hervey's comic book Magna, The Last Pantheon, Volume 1. All right, with that said, guys, we're gonna call it a night. I would like to thank John Hervey for being on my show tonight and talking about his projects and talking about comic books and loving the medium and what they offer in the terms of storytelling techniques, just storytelling in general, and just our overall love of creating a comic book and sitting down and working with other artists who love the medium as well, and getting a product out there for people who are hungry for comic book products, comic book stories. So with that said, I would like to say thank you again to the people at the chat. Thank you to the people watching after the fact, and to John. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit that notification bell on the channel. The more I grow, the more I can have guests on, the more I can talk with other guests and talk about comics, and you will learn. Not only will you not learn about the creators behind the book, but you will learn the love and the passion that we have behind making comic books. We're not in this for the money. We're in this because we love making comic books and we love telling stories. So with that said, good night. Any last words you want to say, John, before we call it a night?
Hey, just if you want to get involved, don't be afraid. Get involved. There's a whole community here. There's a whole community, a supportive community. And you know what? The Renaissance is happening. The revolution is here on Julius's show. It's on these different shows that you're seeing. So however it is, everybody's important. If you're a reader of books, you're important. If you're somebody that shares tweets, you're important. If you're somebody that has a show, you're important. If you're making books, you're important. Just be engaged and be involved.
There you go. There you go. Wise words from a wise man. So with that said, guys, good night. Good luck. Stay safe out there. And we'll see you at the next show. Peace.